Welcome to the World United. Welcome to the World United.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have our next session for the Global Transformation Festival on track one, and we are thrilled to bring you spirituality and education. We have an amazing panel of speakers for you today, and we're going to start off with a mindset coach. His name is Todd Sylvester, and he's going to tell you more about the stuff that he's involved in. But let me just share a bit about what he's been doing. Todd currently serves as a mentor and personal development coach for those looking to get more out of life. And he's also works at what he calls the best university on the planet, Wasatch Recovery Treatment Center, as a belief system counselor. 1989, he founded the nonprofit and anti-drug entity Sly Dog, Drug Free, That's Me, which features a sought-after education program for elementary schools. Now, this program has encouraged over 250,000 school-age students, emphasizing principles of positive self-talk, personal commitment, goal setting, character building. Todd spent his youth addicted to drugs and alcohol. Through his own recovery, a newfound awareness, Todd learned that more powerful than any addiction was the power of the human soul. So for over the past 32 years, Todd has discovered and taught universal principles that have empowered thousands to conquer addiction, crush compulsive behaviors, and change their limiting belief systems. Todd's story was recently told through a popular YouTube clip that received over 6 million views and has been translated into 3 languages. Todd's conducted over 1,200 speaking engagements and close to 17,000 individual coaching sessions. He is the author of the popular ebook, It's Time to Start Living, available on Amazon. He's also produced a popular podcast on iTunes that he actually calls a belief cast that is geared toward the power of our beliefs. Todd's story was also featured in the best-selling author Simon Sinek's book, the new book, Find Your Why, that has now sold over 100,000 copies. So today, Todd uses his firsthand fight against addiction to give hope to thousands of teenagers, young adults, parents, and connects with them on an authentic level. Todd has been married to his sweetheart for 29 years. Woohoo! They have 4 children and live a happy, busy life together. Here are some of the links, and then we can put those in the chat here that you want to maybe be aware of. toddinspires.com would be the first one you're going to be able to go to quickly. If you go to YouTube and look up his channel, Todd Sylvester, you'll find it there. And then TS Inspires as a business page on Facebook. So with that, let me introduce the speech that he will be giving. Is entitled, What Follows I Am Follows You. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Sylvester.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, everyone that on the panel with me. I'm excited to rub shoulders with you guys today, and anyone tuning in today and listening or viewing. I'm just grateful for this opportunity to share some thoughts that will hopefully you'll take this, and it will, at the end of the day, we all feel a lot more love, a lot more spirit, a lot more connection in our lives after this. And so that is my goal with you guys today. That's my intention. And so again, I'm grateful. I like to start off with a quote by James Allen. James Allen's the author of As a Man Thinketh. It's one of my favorite books. And the quote goes like this: of all the beautiful truths pertaining to the soul that has been restored and brought to light in this age, none is more gladdening and fruitful of divine promise and confidence than this, that man is the master, the molder of character, and the maker and shaper of condition, environment, and destiny. And I love that, because there's nothing more gladdening and fruitful than that we are in charge. And it's just a beautiful book. That book was one of the reasons that led me to getting clean from my addictions of almost 10 years. And so I have a really soft place in my heart for James Allen in that book. So, and as Sean mentioned, I want to talk about basically who we are. And I think, when it comes down to the basics, man, that is one of the most powerful spiritual experiences that I can personally have. And I've seen other of my clients over the years when they tap into who they really are, how that has helped them, on a spiritual level. And again, connecting with, other people and, being strong and courageous in the things that they're doing. And so I want to start off with a story. I had an amazing experience about 2 years ago. I got to speak at the Utah State Prison. Toastmasters reached out to me and asked me if I would come speak to the prison. And I've done, many speaking events over the years, but never at the prison. I have spoken at detention centers and things like that, but this was something new. And so I was excited, a little bit nervous. Anyway, I go out to speak to these inmates, and it's just like what you think. You go through these big, pass through these fences with barbed wire. You got to go through metal doors. When I get there, I had to go through a metal detector, and they had to do a background check on me. And so there, it's pretty intense as you walk through there. And when I walked through the metal detector, there was 3 guards. They were waiting for me, and they were kind of just giving me the lay of the land. And they said, "Hey, if something goes down, make sure you're standing by one of us." And I'm like, "Is there something going to go down today that you know of?" And anyway, no, they're just like, "Hey, we just got to let you know if something goes down." And so I was speaking at Promontory, and Promontory has this gymnasium. It's a cinder block gymnasium. It's very small, but when I walk in there, there's 120 inmates sitting already waiting for me. And I walk in the back, have to walk all the way to the very front. They're all looking at me. And again, it was kind of an intimidating sight. I sit down, and they're going to introduce us, and they're going to have 3 inmates speak before me. They're each going to take 5 minutes. They want me to take an hour and a half. And so these 3 inmates get up before me, share their stories. And I'm not kidding you guys. You could hear a pin drop in there. It was amazing. No one was talking to their neighbor. No one was slouching in their chairs. I was just going, man, what is going on here? This is not what I expected. So anyway, when it was my turn, I get up. I'm sharing my story of overcoming addiction. And you know how, you have these moments when you have the room in the palm of your hand. I knew I had these guys, all 120 of them. And I had this impression come over me to ask them this question. I said, "How many of you in the room right now are criminals? Raise your hand." And everyone raises their hand, and they're looking at me like, "Dude, we're in prison." And when their hands were raised, I said, "Why are you lying to yourselves?" And as I was saying that, their arms kind of slowly started to go down. I go, "You guys are lying to yourselves. Why do you guys do that?" And again, they're looking at me going, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "By the show of hands, how many of you committed a crime today?" Luckily, no hands went up, but not one hand goes up. I said, "How many of you committed a crime yesterday?" Not one hand goes up. And I said, "See, you're lying to yourselves." And then I asked them these questions. I said, "How many of you by the show of hands have been honest today so far?" It looked like every hand went up. There might've been 1 or 2 that didn't go up. Then I asked them, "How many of you have done the right thing when no one was looking? Raise your hand." Every hand goes up. And then I said, "How many of you followed the rules so far today here in prison?" Every hand goes up again. And then my last question was, "How many of you have shown respect to your cellmate today? Raise your hand." Every hand goes up. And I said, "See, you're lying to yourselves. You tell yourself you're a criminal, but what you just told me is that you're honest, you have integrity, you're respectful, and you're caring." And I kid you not, guys, had I not been there, I wouldn't have believed it myself. I got a 3-minute standing ovation. And it was in this cinder block gymnasium. Like I said, it was echoing, it was deafening. And I'm not kidding you, I was like standing there, and it was just, there was a guy in the second row, like doing this, waving me down. He goes, "Hey, can I come give you a hug?" I said, "Sure." And he comes up to try to get me, and the guards tackle him. No, I'm kidding. They didn't do that. But he did get in trouble, by the way. But anyway, so when they sat down after that, I mean, again, I'm emotional. A lot of them were emotional. I said, "What follows I am follows you. Stop calling yourself criminals. Yes, you've done criminal behavior in the past, but who are you really right now is you're honest, you have integrity, you're respectful, and you're caring." All 120 of those guys came up, shook my hand, gave me a hug, and they said, "We have never had anyone tell us that." They have a therapist that's there 24/7. She came up to me and said, "I am never going to let these guys ever call themselves criminals again. That was 2 years ago. And I've been back, and they have, that's one of their rules. They can't say they're criminals anymore, which is really cool. And so I share that with you guys because I think a lot of times we tell ourselves a story, and that story becomes our reality, whether it's true or not. And yes, they had criminal behavior in the past, but I'm telling you, it was one of the most remarkable things I've ever witnessed, because of the connection that these guys felt. I mean, they were emotional and this and that. And so one of the key points I want to share with everyone today is the most powerful force in the human psyche is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. Now I'm going to repeat that because it's very important. The most powerful force in the human psyche is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And so what are we telling ourselves? And so, you know, I've had a lot of training over the last 32 years. I've been under some of the greatest therapists that you could ever come by. And one of the things that I learned from one of these therapists that I've trained under, he was telling me one of the best definitions of depression that he ever came across that really described it perfectly was trying to be someone I'm not. And I thought, wow, you know, when I first heard that, I thought, how does that correlate? And it goes back to, you know, I want to emphasize that when we were all little kids, we knew who we were. We loved ourselves. We loved everybody. We had faith as big as the universe. And we lived in that. We lived in joy all day long. And as we get older, what we start doing is when we all go through it, we start comparing, we start analyzing, you know, when we made a mistake, and then we beat ourselves up, and we start future tripping. So we feel anxious. And again, it's part of life and it's part of the process. But what happens is we forget who we are. And then we try to find ourselves fitting in over here, fitting over there. And that usually leaves us feeling empty because we're going against who we truly are. And so one of the most powerful things I've ever witnessed with myself and with my clients is putting them through a process of who they really are. And one of the easiest ways to do that is if you were to write down just on a piece of paper, what are the characteristics of a child? And honestly, if we sat here for an hour, we could come up with 1,000 of them. You know, they're caring, they're strong, they're forgiving, they're understanding, they're resilient, they're believing, they're caring, they're resilient, they are love, they are light, they are energy. And so we knew that when we were all little, but for some reason, as we get older, we forget that. We don't lose them, we forget them. And so I want to remind everyone listening today, if you're struggling with who you really are, all you have to do is do that little simple exercise, and don't let the simplicity trip you up. Simplicity is power. And just going back to the basics of who we are to our core. And so, for example, I have a client right now that he's just coming off of a heroin addiction. And that's the easy part, coming off of that. The hard part is he's been lying and stopping the lying. But see, it causes him a lot of dissonance. And so, because to his core, and I believe this about all of us, we were born honest. And so having him realize, well, who you really are is you're honest. And that's why it bothers you when you're not telling the truth. And so the only way you get rid of that dissonance is start being who you say you are. And that is honest. And when you line those two worlds up, it's pretty remarkable what starts to happen. And so as we do this, I'll tell you, it really is a spiritual experience. Because again, you know, I live in Utah. It's a very religious state. You know, if I ask people who they are here, I hear this often, I'm a child of God. And I'll say, well, what does that mean? And they can't answer that. They're like, I'm not sure. And so, well, then I'll say, well, what are the characteristics of God? And they'll go through that list or whatever. And I basically will say, those same characteristics you just described, you know, your higher power, are the exact same characteristics of a child. And that's who you are. And so it's a really simple, but yet remarkable thing. And so as you do this and you go through that, I think, you know, another one of my favorite quotes is by Ferdinand Foch. He says, the most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire. And I'll tell you, when I'm having moments of, you know, maybe temptation or craving, or, you know, thinking I might do something wrong, all I have to do is remind myself who I am again in those moments. And it truly is it's a very powerful thing and a very spiritual thing. And so those are some thoughts that I have. I know I had 15 minutes. The 15 minutes is up. I'm grateful to be able to share a few of those thoughts with you, and hopefully that was informative and that you guys felt the love that I'm coming from with. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And we'll have more time to dive into some of these ideas that you presented during the panel. Can you just, for myself and for others, share so that quote you just said, the most powerful weapon, was it, in the world?
Yeah.
Is the
most powerful weapon on earth. Yeah. Sorry. Ferdinand Foch.
Ferdinand Foch.
Yeah. He was a French commander in the army.
Great. Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to dive in a little bit more in the panel. So
sure.